Hello, this is Gary Fowler. Great to see all of you today, virtually. I've got my very good friend, John Kuruvilla, here today. And today we're going to talk about some incredible opportunities. John's located in India. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's an investor. He's done an IPO. He's had exits. He's the guru of PropTech globally. And it's with great pleasure that I introduce my friend, John. John, can you say a few words?
Thank you, Gary. It's such a pleasure to be with you again and look forward to sharing the India experience with your audience. It's a fascinating time here in India, from the startup world, the investment world, and from PropTech, which I'm currently focusing on for the past 4 years.
So tell us a little bit about, India seems like it's exploding in terms of opportunity. I hear about India every single day. What's happening?
Gary, I love numbers, and I think numbers speak for itself. So let me just give you some data. The VC investments in 2019 in India was about 15 billion US dollars. Okay, and in 2020, amidst all the gloom and doom, the investments in the last quarter of 2019, which was at about $6.7 billion, plummeted to $2.2 billion. And all the naysayers said, oh, wow, this is bad news for India. And then you know what happened in the second quarter of 2020? In one company, just one company, we saw $20 billion of investment in just 53 days. 53 days.
One
company.
Oh my God.
One company.
And you got how many billion? 1.2, 1.3 billion people? I mean, it's crazy, right? This is incredible opportunity.
And in 53 days, all the naysayers said India's time is done, had to zip up, because in 53 days, you had $20 billion, and you had the best of tech companies investing in this one company. You had Facebook putting in $5 billion, you had Google putting in $5 billion, you had Qualcomm putting in a couple of $100 million, and this is a company called Jio. Wow. It is the largest greenfield project in the world.
So I'm hearing about like the Indian startups every day. Somebody's reaching out to me. I mean, it's incredible. So what's happening? I mean, what's it's like all of a sudden it's taken off. What's really spurring this opportunity?
So two things, Gary. I think the first and most important thing is that this company, Jio, that raised $20 billion in 53 days, actually democratized the internet. It brought down the cost of bandwidth by almost 1/10. And now you have close to 350 million mobile internet users in India. And the numbers are staggering. If I just were to give you some numbers on some of the top global companies with their user base in India, WhatsApp's largest user base, 340 million users are in India. Facebook, 313 million users are in India. Instagram, 100 million users in India. LinkedIn, 65 million users in India. And TikTok had 500 million downloads compared to just 180 million in China and 130 million in the US. So here's a country that is seeking consumption on their mobile phones. And content is today becoming, and thanks to this glorious time of COVID, content is being consumed like never before.
Wow. And so it's incredible. I mean, compared to some of the other giants that have a lot of population. I mean, India's open, right? India's open for business.
Absolutely. This despite the fact that in terms of number of cases, India is now ranked number 2 after the US. So despite all the gloom and doom, I think we as a nation are fairly optimistic about life ahead. E-commerce numbers are back to pre-COVID days. I mean, that's fantastic. People are dining more at home. People are shopping more at home. Credit card usage, payment usage, everything has seen a boom despite the gloom that lies behind us, and some people saying it's going to lie ahead of us.
So, John, I have a question for you. Let's take, there's a company in Silicon Valley and they want to come to India. What do they do? How do they come out?
Okay. So let me give you what they shouldn't do. Because, I was part of a company which did a lot of work for a beverage giant. It's one of the world's biggest beverage giant. I'm not going to name them. They came in and said, per capita of Coke consumption in India is just a liter. In the US is 50 liters. What a great market. And they came and pumped in a lot of money into India, and they bled themselves dry. So the mistake you should never make is believe that India is one homogeneous cluster. India is actually 20 countries in one. The north of India behaves very differently. The south of India behaves very differently. The east of India behaves very differently. It's a marketing person's nightmare. But through all this, the digital infrastructure is now gaining significant momentum. And if you're focused on data, you'll be able to navigate through the diversity that's India and get to different kinds of population.
So how do they do? I mean, if you have 20 different, sorry for interrupt, but I mean, 20 different countries, how in the world does somebody understand how to navigate? So how do you know how to market to those, vegetarians, not vegetarians, how does it work?
So Gary, the best thing for a US company to actually come into India is actually spend time with an Indian entrepreneur who's seen it all. I mean, I'll give you the example of an automotive giant from Japan that I worked with. They spent 2 years studying the Indian market. And this is a brand called Toyota. And within 2 years, they had grabbed almost 30% market share in the MPV segment. So if you take data, analyze it, get insights, and you get actionable insights, and then technology, you can do A/B testing. So the other thing that the other mistake that most international companies make, they come with all guns blazing and talk about the English language. While India has a large number of English population, you've got to be vernacular from day one.
Right. And how do you do that?
You connect. And
so you got 20 regions. How many different languages do people speak, right? Across the board. Yep. How do you market to those populations?
So if you're coming in with content, you have to come in with English. You have to come in with Hindi, which is the mother tongue of India. You have to come with regional languages depending on which markets you need to get into. So if you take English and Hindi, you've covered a large portion of North and almost West and East of India. Then you want to come South, you decide which markets you want to get in. And then, when I'm based in Bangalore, Kannada is the mother tongue in Karnataka. But you have a lot of people from neighboring Tamil Nadu speaking Tamil. So it's a dangerous water to navigate. But somebody who spent eons in marketing, in consumer insights in India, will be able to guide an international company through the murky waters.
And who do they go to if they want to find somebody like that? Do you do that? Do you have friends that do it? How would they? What's some advice? Who would they go to?
Gary, if they're a friend of yours, happy to help them.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
But I tell you, there are 2-3 great institutions in India, the IITs, which are the oldest and the most respected engineering institute in India, which has seen many entrepreneurs in the US. They have a fairly good network of entrepreneurs in India. The Premier Management School, the Indian Institute of Management, has its own alumni network. And I'm sure through the network, you'll be able to figure out people in these prestigious institutions who make up a large portion of the Indian entrepreneurial network. And again, you have a large alumni of Stanford, MIT, Harvard, Oxford. So the alumni network would be a great way to actually do a soft landing into India.
So go to the alumni. It's funny, John. That's the way it works everywhere, isn't it? I mean, you got to have friends that help you out. It's amazing. So Yeah, it's amazing. One of the guys that works for me wrote a book called Business is a Contact Sport, and that's what it's all about. Great. That's super. So you like prop tech, and I know we've had some conversations of prop tech. What's going on with prop tech in India right now? How is it?
So, Gary, I'll bring data in again. Between 2011 to 2014, there was only about $50 million worth of investments by VCs into the PropTech space. I came in 2016 and we launched Asia's first PropTech accelerator. There were just about 100 companies in PropTech in those days. Today, 4 years later, there are about 2,000 startups. And between 2015 and 2019, about $3.3 billion has gone into PropTech. And the beauty is that real estate globally is perhaps the most inefficient industry when it comes to adoption of technology. And thanks to COVID, it has been such a boon for PropTech because real estate industry has realized globally that you have to bring in technology, you have to rapidly deploy technology to automate, to mitigate the risks of challenges like PropTech. I was on a call with a real estate developer friend of mine, and he said, about 6 months back, the total volume of transactions for digital space for him was in the low single digits. In the past 5 months, it's hit about 25%. So out goes the window of an age-old theory that real estate is a touch and feel product. And here comes a force majeure, which has forced everybody to throw old notions out, and consumers are sitting across the world and buying real estate through technology, through VR, through websites, through walkthroughs.
No, I agree with you. I'm in 100%. I mean, why hasn't, you don't need real estate is like dealing with used car salesmen, right? It's better to just have the facts. And if you can virtually tour the property, people in the States, I mean, there's some concerns because people don't want to go into somebody's house because of COVID, right? So why haven't we done this before? Because it's efficient. If I can walk through a house and now there's mass migrations from people from San Francisco and Los Angeles to other states and other areas, why can't I just view those online and make it really efficient? And more importantly, why can't I purchase online? Why can I actually do the transactions online?
So Gary, amazing data again. There's one PropTech startup in the digital marketing space which has generated over 3,000 EOIs for a few real estate companies in the west of India. It was unimaginable 5 months back. And that's only the consumer part of the story. Today, the company that I'm working with called Brigade, which set up Asia's first PropTech accelerator, is actually looking at bringing in technology that can do remote site management. So 95% of your workforce sits on project sites. And this company is now deploying technology rapidly to get a line of sight from head office as to what's happening there. And they're bringing in drones, they're bringing in VR, they're bringing in sensors, they're IoTizing entire projects.
Oh, I love that. So it makes the construction process a lot better, right? A lot more efficient. Simpler. So you can do it from anywhere. I mean, that's very interesting. And what do you see? What's the future like? I mean, what's the future going to be? I mean, how deeply we're going to get involved in those type of technologies in terms of construction? What do you think?
So Gary, it's sooner than later now. I think this has been phenomenal times. It has disrupted everything we know. And people have woken up to the fact that this is a great time to introspect and completely reimagine and re-engineer everything that they thought worked in the past. And there are real estate companies that are the cutting edge of rapid adoption of technology in India, and they're seeing quick benefits from this. I talked about this company that is now doing 25% of its transactions through the digital medium. And wow. The consumers are coming from the US, they're coming from the Middle East, they're coming from Europe, London. And gone are the days where there was this misconception that unless a consumer does a site visit, unless he sees the project, he's not going to buy. The days are gone.
Well, I mean, the thing is, what
The
about
real-
that company come to the rest of the world, right? I mean, because I know in the US we need it. I'm sure in Europe they need it because now cross-border transactions, it's not about one country. It's about where the opportunity is, where it can live the best, where the taxes are the lowest. I mean, there's a lot of different, where I feel safe. And now I don't know if it was on a panel we were on yesterday or the day before, but where do I feel secure and where do I have some land so I can go outside?
Yeah. And Gary, you have an interesting company in your portfolio, which is taking care of senior citizens. And a senior citizen, as long as because today they're nuclear families, kids have flown the coop. And there is a senior citizen residence where my dad stays, and there are people from Switzerland, there are people from the US, foreign citizens married into Indian families, now living very, very comfortably. And they have exactly what you said. They have land, they have pools, they have heated pools, they have nurses on call, and it doesn't matter now where they stay. So it's become truly a global village.
It's a lot cheaper, right, John?
Lot cheaper. Absolutely.
Yeah. How much would it cost? I mean, it's interesting. What would it cost to have that? Because it's unimaginable here. What would it be? For
Gary, it'll blow your mind.
Okay.
For $50,000, for $50,000, $50,000, you can get a great 1 BHK apartment to buy, and it'll cost you under $500 per month to take care of a couple.
$500
a month for a couple. Food, medical aid, nurses. That's why people are coming.
I mean, it's like, that sounds like a business opportunity in of itself. You know, John, my father was in a nursing home in the US. It cost $14,000 a month. A month for the nursing.
Send him to India, and he will love
it. What you're telling me now is like, it's incredible, right? I mean, these are opportunities. If we talk about the democratization of opportunity, this is it. I mean, understand where you can take your money and be able to get to maximize the opportunity for it. Now you have to, so if somebody wants to get the information, they can contact you directly. You could put them in the right direction. Oh, that's great. Super. Wow. I love that.
And the beauty is that, you want to meet your dad. You live in the US. Your dad lives in the US. How often do you meet him? Once a year?
Well, I mean, the thing is, with the nursing home stuff, you do it more, but I want to know what's going on with them, right? So you want to understand what's happening with your parent. And it used to be once a year, but, and the challenges are we're all dispersed everywhere, right? So if you're he's in Pennsylvania, I'm in California. I mean, the situation is, you don't get, there's 3,000 miles between us. So you don't get to see him every day. That's for sure.
And now Zoom, WhatsApp calls have made even access and visibility, and they want to see you. They don't want to hear a voice. I mean, my dad sees me on the phone once a week. I visit him once in 2 months, and he's comfortable.
That's
something
great.
Technology has also bridged the gap between visible access.
Well, I mean, the other thing is we talked about, I know you talked to Zemply, one of the companies that we're working with. I mean, having the ability to do, to be able to monitor what's going on with your loved one. Parna is from India originally. Her father's in India today. She's in the US. I mean, being able to know what's going on, that's part of the peace of mind too. Get to see their face and verify it from, sensors and things. So it's going to happen. We have an aging population in many parts of the world, and we need to understand how to take care of our parents better, right? Because hope and quality of life is really important.
Correct. Well, and I'll give an incident in my life, Gary. My mother was highly diabetic. My parents used to live in a house, an independent house in Kerala, and my mother went up to the terrace to just, figure out something. and she had low sugar and she collapsed on the roof. And she would have died had not an uncle of mine come in to visit and he found her there. And today, with Zempli's technology, you can figure out what the issue is, even if you're sitting 1,000 kilometers away. And that's the beauty of technology.
I agree. I mean, it's, you know, and the thing is, isn't it interesting because people in general don't want to talk about it, right? They're like, I mean, in the US, I don't know what's like in India, but we have different relationships with our parents, not as close nuclear family or extended family, I suspect, as India. But we don't want to talk about it a lot, but this is a pervasive problem. I mean, we've got a growing elderly population and we need to do something about it. And if we don't do it the right way, how in the world can people spend $14,000 a month? You know, they were saying, well, in order to do this, it's $14,000 a month and you've got to pay 5 years in advance. It's crazy. Not everybody has that kind of money to do it. And the other part is, who wants to do it, right?
And Gary, look at it this way. Your dad, suppose he was in Graceland, which is the elderly care place where my dad is. That's for a single person, it would be $250. You could spend another $1,000 flying in and flying out. It'll still be cheaper than $14,000 a month.
Wow. And you're saying they have nurses and doctors and the place to stay, everything?
Yep.
Unbelievable.
Everything.
Unbelievable.
So they take care of basic health care, but if you have a serious issue, they have associations with hospitals close by. They have ambulances on call. They have ambulances on the site. They have drivers. They have vehicles. They even have guest houses for family to come and stay when you want to spend time with them.
Wow. And it's probably a lot cheaper for the medical than it would be in a place like the US.
Absolutely.
Wow. Interesting. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that. And I hope the audience enjoys it because this is a pervasive problem and we need to address it. And things like artificial intelligence and PropTech and healthcare initiatives and technology are going to really be important. So fantastic. So tell me a little bit about the AI on the PropTech side. I know you've been involved in that quite a bit. Tell me a little bit about that. That's interesting for my audience.
So Gary, I'll again put the entire thing in perspective. You know, the environment is at significant risk because of urbanization. As a result, I mean, you'd be shocked to know that the place that I stay in, there's a 15% rise in temperature over the past 10 years. Now, every degree.
How much? How much, John? How many degrees?
15%. It's gone up by almost 4.5, 5 degrees. Now, every degree increases your HVAC costs by 4%. The groundwater table in Bangalore was at 250 to 300. It's now at 1800. 30% is the water management cost in Bangalore. The waste is going into lakes. The waste is not being treated. In the next 5 years, you will need a city the size of Bangalore to actually have landfills. Now, what is the impact on real estate? If you don't have smart buildings, if you don't have AI-driven applications to tell you preventive, reactive, responsive buildings, you're going to actually create a lot of waste and inefficiency in buildings in India. Mm-hmm. There's a company that I'm mentoring that has saved 3 billion liters of water across the past 12 months in just 3 cities in India.
3 billion
liters of water.
Wow, that's incredible. Wow.
It's a company called WeGot, so what is realized, and very smart entrepreneurs, and I love the entrepreneurs because they're solving real problems. These entrepreneurs came up and said, look, there's a serious water problem, and the Cape Town issue impacted them seriously, and they said, there is no way that we can save India except by rationalizing the use of water. So they created ultrasonic water meters which actually monitor, measure, and also inform people about how much water they are wasting. Water leakage is a big issue in India. Today, from just your phone app, you can switch off leakages in your homes. There is a company called EcoSTP, which is bringing down power consumption in corporate offices by 30%.
Wow, that's incredible. And so part of it is just
So
understanding what you're doing, right? So if you understand what the consumption is, and if you're wasting it, you can understand how to make a correction. You can course correct. Wow, that's great. And so this whole
Gary, let me
how
tell you about two amazing entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I mean, this is about sustainability. And you're right. I mean, this isn't just in India, this is across the world. How much waste is there everywhere, right?
So plastic is one of the biggest contaminations across the world. There's a company from a small town in the south of India which is actually creating an alternate to bitumen. So they're creating roads built out of plastic waste. There's a company building. There's a company building bricks from plastic waste. They're more durable. They don't leak. They don't have as much wear and tear as bitumen. Therefore, roads that last 7 years with bitumen now last 15 years with plastic.
Mhm.
And you're actually disposing waste in a constructive manner.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, really interesting. Super. So, what's the future like in terms of what does it look like from your standpoint? What's going to happen over the next 10 to 15 years?
I think the past 6 months have been a phenomenal teacher to every industry.
Mhm.
And the real estate industry has realized in India, because I deal with thousands of real estate owners here, they've realized that it's time that they lived in harmony with nature
Yeah.
and they actually look after the environment, because by building sustainable buildings and environment friendly buildings, they can actually save billions in both capex and opex.
Yeah.
So they've realized that building sustainable buildings can actually give them a financial benefit.
I agree. And what do you think? I mean, these companies that are doing all this incredible technology, how are they going global? How do they come out of India and attract different to different markets? Are they doing that, or what's the trend like? Because obviously, if you're making better water solutions, better treatment, if you're looking at sustainability, if you're looking at energy conservation in buildings, I mean, this is happening everywhere. How do they do it? Are they coming out? Are they going global? What are they doing today?
So one of the things that, and I'm speaking for PropTech because that's a sector I know very well now. One of the challenges that these startups have is that the US is very, very expensive when it comes to consumer acquisition costs. There
Right.
are also very strong regulatory frameworks for everything. It's like a walled garden there for technology that's coming from developed nations like India. So
Right.
what are we doing as a company? We are now going into other developing nations. For example, one of the biggest places that we've seen, two big markets we're going after are the Middle East and Africa.
Hmm.
Similar behavior of consumers. A lot of Indians in these markets, a lot of senior decision makers are Indians in these markets, and they understand the power of what startups working with large companies like the company I'm working for bring to the table, and that is a credibility factor which is established. So we're telling startups, do not jump straight into the US or Europe. These are expensive markets. Make a first leap of faith into the Middle East and into Africa, test the waters there, and those are large enough markets for you to actually build large businesses and generate sufficient capital to then expand to the other markets. And the way we're looking at these companies to actually get into the US or into Europe is through a licensing agreement. So
Got
that's
it.
a smarter way of doing it instead of trying to set it up, replicate. And today you talked about it. Cross border, there is so much of synergy. There's so much of collaboration, like the two of us are doing for our own companies. I think collaboration is going to be a way of the future, and I think the startups have realized it. I mean, if I see the investments in geo coming from Google, from Facebook, from Qualcomm, I think everybody has now realized that it's good to compete at one level, but at some level, collaboration can actually build 1 + 1 = 11.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, and if you do it that way, if you do it in a partnership kind of model, that you're talking about, the risk goes down a lot because you don't have, expenses and issues, cultural issues. It's surely reduced. I think that's great. And I mean, Africa as well, what, 1 billion+ people. So, I mean, think about what the
Yeah.
vast opportunities are.
And the beauty about Africa, I've spent significant time there over the past year, is that if India leapfrogged technology over 10 years in Africa, I'm seeing that happen in the next 3 years. So
Absolutely.
the pace of rapid change and adoption in Africa will be significantly higher than what's happened in India. M-Pesa, which is the digital payment, actually took the world by storm from Africa.
And I didn't know that.
There are some phenomenally smart entrepreneurs in Africa.
Well, I mean, this whole digital transformation, right? This whole digital transformation has really leveled the playing field so people can now participate. I love it, right? Because now you've got, I know in some of the calls we've had people from all over Nigeria, all over South Africa, Egypt, all over, literally. And it's incredible how this is really leveling the playing field. I mean, things like Zoom and StreamYard and Microsoft Teams. I mean, all kinds of incredible technologies that helping us get closer. And by the way, people seem to be open to the technology today because there wasn't a choice 5 months ago, and now they're starting to adapt to it, right?
Absolutely. And I think this is going to be the decade for startups because all these big companies have realized that if they have to be disruptive, they have to work with startups because large companies have got pulled under their own weight. They're no longer agile. They're no longer as nimble as they used to be. And the best way to do this is outsource some great people from within and then insource them or invest in disruptive startups and then bring them in. But the lessons people are learning is even if you acquire startups, keep them at an arm's distance so they don't get inculcated into your own draconian culture, which is slow and it's made you flat-footed.
Well, I mean, that's it because you got corporate politics, you got all this stuff. I mean, corporations, I remember a long time ago, we talked about, corporations are risk averse, right? It's against the model.
Yeah.
So, and startups, it's all about risk. So if you don't take a risk, you don't win.
Yeah. And
So
Gary, I keep talking, because I had the fortune of working for the man at Jio. I mean, WhatsApp got to 100 million users in, I think, 7-8 months. Jio got to 100 million subscribers in 170 days.
Wow.
And that's a very large company. And it is still agile, it is still nimble. So corporates have to learn that elephants can dance.
Well, I mean, an elephant's
figure
going to
out
have $1 billion in their bank account too.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
That's a good thing, right? I mean, when it's all said and done, it's amazing, right? Change the world, put $1 billion in the bank, and what's next?
Yeah, absolutely.
So listen, so some closing thoughts. What's your prediction for the future in terms of, opportunities for Indian companies? We talked about companies coming to India. I mean, what do you think? How's the pace? What's going to happen over the next year in terms of the pace from your perspective?
So I think collaboration is going to be a very, very strong for cross-border relationships and partnerships. I think the basis for a success of any collaboration has to be trust and very clearly articulated KPIs or KRAs and measurable indexes. I think collaboration with trust, with measurable outcomes are going to rapidly escalate in the next 12, 18 months. I don't see the change from COVID going away anytime soon, though there are people saying it'll happen in 3 months, 6 months. I don't think so. I think it's here for at least 12 to 18 months minimum.
Yeah, I agree.
And I believe that, you have to completely reimagine everything that worked for you for the past decades, past few years, and look at a new way of working. I mean, real estate developers in India are re-architecting residential apartments to build in comfortably sized offices, because work from home is touted to be the next big disruption in the workspace. So how do you combat that? You build residential homes with good studios, office studios. So
No,
I
I
think these are
agree.
some of the changes.
And people are scrambling for that right now, right? Everybody's saying, well, I need to get a bigger place. I want to put a office in it. I need to have one for my wife. I need to want one for my son. I need this. I mean, it's happening now as we speak. It's interesting.
And it'll create a reverse migration from the urban metropolises to the suburbs. And I think you and I talked about it. You will see an interesting transition from people selling their homes in New York and moving to the suburbs, larger homes with gardens. And I think that's going to be a reality even in India.
Yeah, no, it's happening right now. It's like crazy. Well, listen, John, I want to say thank you very much. I know you're a busy guy for taking time out of your schedule to join me here today. I appreciate it. I'm sure my audience enjoyed our conversation. I want to thank you a lot, and I look forward to many, many years communicating together, and I'll take you up on your offer of coming to India. I really appreciate that. That would be really cool. So thank you very much. And again, every 2 weeks, we have our show, GSD Presents, and I appreciate the audience joining us today. We want to be insightful. We want to bring incredible knowledge, and we want to be able to think differently. So thanks for joining us today. Thanks for your time, and take care of yourself. See you later, John. I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Pleasure. All. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Good day.